I'm Nimsha Jaiswal. Welcome to the program. We start in Yemen, which has been hit for a second day by US airstrikes. US officials say the new targets posed a threat to shipping in the Red Sea, which has been disrupted by Houthi attacks in recent weeks. Houthi leaders vowed retaliation following the first wave of airstrikes.
Sanaa's streets packed with protesters. They're incensed by a wave of US and British strikes on dozens of Houthi targets in Yemen, launched in retaliation for attacks on shipping in the Red Sea.
This is a message to Britain and especially the United States of America that they will pay a heavy price for this aggression. Those crowds today authorized the leader of the revolution and authorized the military leadership to respond to this aggression at high levels at sea and on land.
But the US and UK say the strikes, which hit military targets, were acts of self-defense. Houthi rebels, who are backed by Iran, have been targeting ships in the Red Sea for weeks, with the group releasing this footage in November of its fighters appearing to seize a vessel. It claims the attacks are in response to Israel's war in Gaza against Hamas, whom the US, EU and other countries have labelled a terrorist organisation. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who is currently visiting Ukraine, said the strikes were necessary, proportionate and targeted.
Well, over the last month, we've seen a significant increase in the number of Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. That's putting innocent lives at risk. It's disrupting the global economy, and it's also destabilizing the region. And in that time, we've also seen the single biggest attack on a Navy warship, a British Navy warship, that we've seen in decades. Now, it's clear that that type of behaviour can't carry on.
The big question now is what this could mean for the war in Gaza and the wider region, with the world bracing for a response from the Houthis and those who support them.
Hans-Jakob Schindler is Senior Director of the NGO, the Counter-Extremism Project. He joins us from New York City. Welcome to DW. And what do you think this escalation means for the Red Sea, one of the busiest shipping channels in the world?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, I mean, this situation was unavoidable. Over the last couple of months, really since November, the Houthis have really tried to inhibit international shipping through the Red Sea, which is a big problem for Europe as well as a big problem for Egypt, whose proceeds from the Suez Canal have plummeted by, I think, 25%. So this situation was not sustainable. It pushes up market prices. Several shipping organizations are no longer using the Suez Canal and going around Africa, which adds 14 days to the time goods for goods to reach Europe or goods from Europe to reach Asia. It adds a lot of additional shipping insurance. So it's really a global economic problem. Behind all of this, of course, is Iran. Iran decided now that since it's losing very clearly its proxy Hamas in Gaza, it wants to build up the Houthis as some kind of a proto-Hezbollah group in the south of Israel. And there had to be some reaction. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the last time attacks on the ground in Yemen are going to be necessary to fully deter the Houthis and Iran.
The point of this international flotilla, this Operation Prosperity Guardian, the point was to deter Houthis from attacking shipping. Now that the Houthis have been attacked in Yemen, they have said that they will respond in kind. They will retaliate. So this looks like this action from the US and Britain looks like it's raising the temperature rather than calming things down.
Well, I mean, let's be clear on the order of things here. So it was not the international community attacking the Houthis first. It was the Houthis attacking the international community.
No, we get that. We get the sequence of events. My question really is about what happens now that this has happened.
Yeah. Look, obviously, everyone hopes that this one military strike on the Houthis on the ground, right? 16 targets, 160 targeted strikes in this attack, is going to be enough to deter the Houthis. I did not expect the Houthis to make an announcement today to say, we back down. But let's see what they do actually then in operational terms. Are they going to continue to attack international shipping? I would say at least one more round of strikes will be necessary to really deter them, to make it clear to them that they are up against an international force that is determined to keep the waterways open.
Except that, are they really up against a determined international force? The US is leading this operation. The US has elections this year. The US has demonstrated over the last few years that it does not have the stomach for protracted overseas conflicts.
Well, I mean, because the US has elections this year, we need to keep that waterway open. 10% of the world oil transport goes to there. Brent has already gone up 4% last night. So, you know, we need to keep that waterway open in order to prevent large-scale economic impacts of these things. So I don't see another option.
You've told me about the good reasons that the US and Britain think they have for launching this attack. I'm asking you, given your expertise, to tell us about the likely outcomes. You talk about the Houthis. Yeah. The Houthis have been at war pretty much in one way or another since for the last couple of decades. They have a much bigger tolerance, not only for being shot at, but for also sustaining casualties. Don't they have more stomach for this conflict than the international flotilla that has been put together?
Well, let me put it to you in another way. So how else were we supposed to be dealing with this? Should we accept that the Suez Canal is simply no longer usable for international shipping? Of course the Houthis are going to resist. Of course there are a militia force who pays absolutely no heed, as Hamas does in Gaza for Palestinians. They don't care in Yemen for Yemenis. I absolutely understand that. But I also feel that there is an ability to deter not the Houthis, but also Iran from continuing to attack in this manner international shipping by removing their capabilities to do so. It's one thing to fight the Houthis on the ground in Yemen. It's quite another thing to remove their long strike capabilities, which is rocket launch sites and drone launch sites, and to send a very clear message to Iran that if they want to close the Suez Canal, that this is no longer regional, but a global problem. I don't see another option of what could be done. We cannot accept the Suez Canal for being closed.
Good talking to you. Thank you for joining us. Hans-Jakob Schindler from the Counter-Extremism Project. Veena Ali Khan, who's a Yemen analyst and joins us from New York. Welcome, Veena. The basics I want to start with, first of all, who are these guys, the Houthis? Who are they, and what are they fighting against or for?
Of course. So the Houthis control most of the population of Yemen, including the capital Sana'a and some of the western and northern areas close to Saudi Arabia. And the international recognized government controls the rest of the country. The Houthis initially launched an insurgency in the northern country in 2004 and came into Sana'a in 2014. Ostensibly, they are a Zaydi Shia group, and this is very different from the Shiaism you find in Iran. Although we hear a lot about Iran's relationship with the Houthis, the group remains Yemeni, and the reasons that turn them into an armed group are very local. For the past 6 years, they've been fighting against the internationally recognized government backed by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And recently, in response to events in Gaza, they've kind of shifted the needle to focus their attacks on the wider, what they see as the US aggression.
OK, thank you for that. And let's look at the targets of these British and American missile strikes. What did they hit? And apparently they killed 5 people.
Yeah, so the actual missile attacks focused on in Houthi areas of Hodeidah, Hajjah and Sana'a. And this was after the UK and the US reinforced naval deployment back in January into the Red Sea. You know, I think generally, if the aim of these strikes were to force the Houthis to halt their attacks on the Red Sea, it will not work. The incident allows the Houthis to frame themselves as a pro-Palestine movement. The Houthis themselves say that the strikes will not achieve any results. They have vowed to respond. This could take the shape of increasing attacks on the US and British vessels in the Red Sea, or even attacking US assets in the Gulf. So this could take the shape of military bases. Ironically, these strikes, in my opinion, actually benefit the Houthis in the long term. It helps to prove their narrative that the real enemy is the US. The Houthis have long built their legitimacy on hostility towards the US and Israel. Thus, if anything, the strikes only increases their popularity and gives the group more leverage. Also, the Houthis have likely been preparing for this attack themselves. The UK and the US have been releasing warnings for the past month, and it's not as if the group actually has normal military infrastructure. They very much rely on missile launch bases that are transportable. So the actual damage caused by these strikes is minimal.
And so far, so predictable. The US and Britain fire rockets, hit people, kill people. The Houthis vow revenge. This is what we would expect. What you've been saying there is you actually believe that they will follow through on this. And this is what I've been hearing pretty much all day, that they don't, as an enemy, the Houthis do not act in what you might call a rational way, because so much of what is done to them, as you say, plays into their narrative. And also, they've been doing this for the best part of 20 years.
I mean, you know, in the past, since Israel launched its war ever since the Gaza events kind of escalated, the Houthis have successfully linked the Red Sea crisis to Gaza. You know, they are deterring vessels on the way to Israel, demanding that Israel ends its assault on Gaza, which will unlikely in the long term deter the Israelis from halting their attack. So with these attacks from the US and UK and the minimal damage it's caused, it's a win-win situation for the Houthis, right? The US won't be able to deter the Houthis from escalating or resuming their attacks on the Red Sea. And at the same time, the Houthis can gain leverage on, you know, their propaganda machine. So either way, the situation isn't a loss for them.
Right. And I wonder if part of the Houthi calculus is that the US is likely to have little stomach for a foreign adventure in an election year.
I mean, I think ever since the Red Sea escalation started, the Houthis have calculated that the US does not want a war, right? It does not want a regional escalation, not just because of the US elections, also because, you know, even in 2015, when the Saudis entered Yemen, this did not lead to the eradication of the Houthis. Actually, quite opposite, the Houthis have become far stronger. Also, this whole escalation is happening at the same time where the Houthis were meant to be reaching a peace agreement with the Saudis, whereby they would actually have gotten a lot of their demands fulfilled. So either way, the Houthis are feeling very confident at the moment to raise the stakes. And the US, on the other hand, whatever strategy it carries out at the moment, it's a lose-lose situation, right? Even if they don't do anything to deter the Houthis will carry on. At the same time, if they escalate attacks in Yemen, they risk this situation, running into a regional conflagration.
And so a brief word then about the nature of that escalation. What do you think would bring the Houthis' main backer, Iran, directly into this conflict?
I mean, I think, without a doubt, throughout the years, Iran's relationship with the Houthis have become stronger. Iran has helped with weapons, technology for anti-tank guided missiles and intelligence. I think with the recent attacks, although it's clear Iran does play a role, it's difficult to discern exactly what that role is, right? Because the Houthis have itself increased their own capabilities independently of Iran throughout these years as well. And this all plays part of the Iranian strategy of kind of plausible deniability, whereby they can use the Houthis to escalate while maintaining the public stance that they have nothing to do with attacks. So, you can say right now that Iran is involved while at the same time denying it.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for taking us through that so clearly. Yemen analyst Veena Ali Khan.
Thank you for having me.